featured student of mine from great and august Tulane University, ladies and gentlemen, who brings a wealth of international experience and a current internship that will directly connect with your own personal dreams and passions and greater global desires. Give it up for Rayna Wolff, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you everyone here and everyone online for allowing me to speak tonight. Let me see it.
You can just sit there. I'll just see real quick. Act natural.
Your backlight on the right now.
Oh, am I doing that? There you go.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's not perfect.
A little bit closer so they can make sure they hear you.
So I want to say you guys are my favorite Rotary Club. I reached out to all of the Rotary Clubs in New Orleans, and you were the only ones who responded. So good on you for that.
Whoa.
So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself, and then talk about some facts about global poverty, and then talk about the internship I have with the Borgen Project, and then finish with some legislation that is that we're currently advocating for. So I really came face to face with poverty when I moved to Kenya, and I lived there for several years. And poverty was no longer like an issue that was like, oh, that's just a thing like over there. I could really see it face to face, and like I had relationships with like my house help and bus drivers and people who served me food in my school, and we talked about poverty, and we talked about the issues that Kenya was facing, and so it became very real to me. And then I noticed just how important international assistance is when I worked in the Rohingya refugee camps in Bangladesh, because the government of Bangladesh does not allow the refugees to work or make any sort of income. So they are all 100% dependent on aid. So that aid is essential so that they have the food and water and the shelter that they need. So just a couple facts to show you just how big the issue is. Over 700 million people live in extreme poverty, and that's people who live on less than $1.90 a day. But the good news is that we have seen results that aid has helped, because in 1990, 36% of the population lived in extreme poverty, and in 2015, only 10%. So that's still an enormous amount of people, but 36 to 10% is pretty good. Also, 2 billion people lack regular access to sufficient and nutritious food, and 2.5 million newborns every year die within their first month of life. So I have a question to pose. What percent of our GDP do you think we spend on foreign assistance?
You should know this since I talked about it in economics class last week.
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer.
Yeah, I don't know if
Five?
you're allowed to answer, right? I think we have to shut up, right? You can't say it.
I'm rather, I guess.
What the GDP?
What percentage of our GDP do you think, or the US
America's GDP.
America's GDP do you think we spend on foreign assistance? Okay.
26%.
So we spend less than 1% on foreign assistance. And just to kind of show you a comparison between numbers, we spent $33 billion on foreign assistance, but the budget for the Department of Defense received $695 billion. So that is a big the more that people are able to spend when they get out of poverty, the more they are able to consume things, and the more we are able to trade. And the bigger the markets are, the bigger the consumer base is. And also, it's really important for our national security. It's just true that diplomacy and development work is cheaper than military engagement. And also, poverty creates unstable conditions. And when we help with foreign assistance, we can create allies and fight against terrorism, which is a problem. So now to tell you a little bit about the Borgen Project. The Borgen Project is a bipartisan national campaign that works to make poverty a focus of U.S. foreign policy. And so they primarily do that through lobbying Congress. And they focus specifically on food security, newborn child and maternal health, and clean water and sanitation. So they'll advocate for that legislation to the congressmen and women. And a little bit about what I do. So I raise awareness about the issue of global poverty, like I'm doing right now. I also educate people on how they can make a difference and how they can impact the world. For example, I can tell people that they can go to the BorgenProject.org and donate or spend 30 seconds emailing your representatives to talk about a legislation or an issue that's important. So yeah, that's really simple. I'll tell them, just to go to the BorgenProject.org. And also, I mobilize people, so like my friends and family, and people just to encourage them to, call congressmen and write to them and make sure that like everyone in the nation is working on this project. So some legislation that's currently up for or in the progress of becoming a bill, the Global Health Security Act that supports or increases the support of pandemic preparedness and prevents threats of infectious disease outbreaks. So this is really important in that we aren't caught off guard again, and that we prevent this pandemics for the future. There's also the Girls Lead Act. That increases girls' participation in democracy, human rights, and governance, which is really important because a lot of girls don't have a voice in their community, don't have like leadership positions, and so this will help support them to be able to make a difference and have a voice. And also the Reach Every Mother and Child Act. So this increases efforts to end preventable deaths for newborns and young children and mothers in developing countries. I feel like that was pretty self-explanatory. So I wanted to end with a quote that Nelson Mandela gave in a speech. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. And overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life. While poverty persists, there is no true freedom. Thank you for letting me speak. And
don't go anywhere.
yeah, does anyone have any questions?
There's lots of questions.
Lots of them.
Awesome.
Who's going first?
I have lots of answers.
Go for it, Jason.
No.
I just wanted to know, like, what's the biggest challenge of the organization when it comes to, you know, outreach or even getting things done from a national level, right? You mentioned the GDP percentage, right? And you know, what are the challenges there that you're trying to overcome typically to like raise that number?
Yeah.
And it's basically like the question is, why does this thing exist? You get to like do more. What are the big hurdles that you see?
So like why is it hard to advocate for like the international affairs budget? So that's a good question. I would probably say that just a lot of misconceptions about foreign assistance will stop certain lawmakers from deciding to either increase the budget or keep the budget the same because either they believe that aid is actually hurting these developing countries or they believe that
In your internship, does this issue come up?
Oh, okay. No, not really. I mean, I have kind of a deadlock with my representatives because I have written to them and emailed them and called them, and they have written back, and they are
Which
here.
representative is that?
Steve Scalise and Bill Cassidy and
Yeah, well,
John Kennedy.
I can tell you why you're not getting anywhere with those guys.
A political organization, comrade.
And so they write back to me.
Cedric Richmond would have been who you wanted to talk to, but obviously he is now kicked up.
So it sounds like that's like one of your big challenges, or the organization's big challenges, is to try to get past that first stair step, right? Of like getting buy-in from maybe folks with misinformed ideas, old ideas, those types of things.
Yeah,
right?
and like people will say, oh, well, we should be focusing on domestic poverty. Like, why are we giving so much
That is also true, but that's almost like a whataboutism, right? Like that is not part of the problem that you're addressing, right?
Yeah, and it's not an issue that overshadows each other. Like they can both exist, and we can work on both issues. Domestically, we can work on poverty, and internationally, we can give assistance. So they're not combating like.
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, right? Like,
Yeah.
You don't have to say, well, we're going to do this instead of that, right? Like we're not talking about that. And yes, it's a problem, right? But this is what we're talking about. Right?
Yeah.
So what were you doing in Kenya as a young girl?
So I was there my 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And my mom worked for World Vision Somalia, but she didn't want us to live in Somalia.
Really?
So we lived in Kenya and she flew for work. And there I went to an international school and met a lot of really interesting people and got to experience just a world outside of America and a world that wasn't so focused on itself, focused on the global world. So that was fundamental to make me who I am.
And how'd you get to that connection?
So my parents moved to Bangladesh, and my mom worked for World Vision Bangladesh, and so she hooked me up with an internship with WFP, the World Food Program, and that was incredible working in the refugee camps. I mean, it kind of deterred me from doing field work in the future just because it just hit me so hard. But that was amazing.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, we have some people that this young lady should talk to, don't we?
For sure. I'm curious if the Borgen Project has sort of put into focus any aspect of the international development experience that you hadn't had before through your classes, through your personal experience, through the careers of your parents.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say that it would be specific legislation that I just didn't know about. Is the primary thing that I've learned from the internship for the Borgen Project. So, for example, the Global Health and Security Act, I was not aware of that, and I think it's great because I want to be prepared for the next pandemic. I don't want to be caught off guard, and so just to know that I can be advocating for that legislation is important and makes me feel like I'm making a difference.
How do we classify the Borgen Project? Is it a political advocacy organization?
Yes, it is a political advocacy organization. It's bipartisan, and it's a national campaign that makes poverty the focus of U.S. foreign policy.
Well said. Other questions?
I have a question. How?
Oh wait.
Meredith.
We have Meredith and Tara.
How?
When I was for 4 years, I really understand. I understand like the concept of being poverty and like seeing the world outside of the U.S. But I have some logistics questions for you with advocating for the U.S. to help other countries. Like, isn't there kind of pushback from those countries to receive the money? To receive the aid?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of countries that are dismissing aid. That could be possible, but I'm not aware of any countries that are doing that. Especially now with coronavirus, I think a lot of developing countries are wanting all the help that they can get, especially access to the vaccine. And so, yeah, I think, I'm not aware of any countries that are not accepting aid.
I kind of read some things about India. I guess the way you get money into India for aid is not like you have to go through, like there's like a funny path to it. And I was curious if you would encounter that in any of the other countries. And I know some of the countries would be really proud about accepting some of some.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. This is out of my personal curiosity, but how ineffective or effective do you think the World Bank and the IMF are at alleviating poverty?
Oh, you mean the U.S. Bank?
Boy, you
Yeah,
really
the World
really
Bank.
drive me out of the room.
The U.S.
The
Yeah,
US
great
slash-
question. So I think that statistics are proven that it has been effective because within the last I can pull it up. I have facts like right on my phone.
days.
About what the World Bank and IMF have successfully done.
Jason, do you have feelings on the success of the World Bank?
Open
As
Pandora's
someone who
box.
worked for the World Bank IMF for 4 years in a contractual obligation position, quite strong, yeah. Undoubtedly, there are issues with every country, with every project, but overall, I think the World Bank has been a force for good where it has been able to operate. The IMF is a little bit more complicated, to put it partial.
Yeah, what are you gonna say?
I definitely agree that it's doing more good, especially now as compared to the past when they messed things up.
Like the 1980s.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the classic World Bank one of the classic World Bank projects is looked at is have a virtually eliminated lines in countries like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand by getting farmers to plant a strain of rice that was fortified with vitamin A.
Okay.
And the World Bank made all of these microloans available and got it done. And blindness in children, so children being born without eyesight, dropped by 97% over a 10-year period, simply because the rice they were getting was more nutritious. That's probably one of the most famous wins.
And I was just going to say, like, over the past 20 years, malnutrition has been cut in half. Global poverty rates have been cut in half since 2000. Annual AIDS-related deaths have fallen by 43%. There are many countries who used to receive aid who are now giving aid to other countries. More than 3 million lives are saved every year through USAID immunization programs. The life expectancy in the developing world has increased by about 33%. Smallpox has been eradicated worldwide. Literacy rates increased by 33% in the last 25 years. And in the last 25 years, primary school enrollment has tripled. Yeah, so I think the World Bank is good in that it has policies that try to make it so that they don't need aid in the future. Like they try to do things like give women microloans, like start businesses, and like give farmers technology for farming and knowledge. And that means that they can be self-sufficient and then no longer need the aid. So I think that's an important thing too.
Two-part question, and these might just be kind of the real things to think about, but if you have answers, great. How involved are these world funds, aka US funds? How much are they involved in this project, in this organization? Like, how much does the World Bank have to do with this work?
Okay. So the Borgen Project works specifically with legislators and convincing them to take action and convincing them to support certain legislation.
But where do they get their money?
But so then it may
Who
not
pays
involve.
for the Borgen Project?
Yeah, so it may not involve women at all, right? Because it would be loans at that point.
Yeah, it doesn't. They convince Congress to support USAID.
So, second part, how does the Morgan Foundation ensure that the money goes to those whom we help as opposed to those who are administering the program in itself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not completely sure the answer.
And that's fine. It's just like kind of something to think about. Like,
Yeah.
how,
You
like,
have sparked many questions.
you know, like end to end, right? What does that look like? And is this, you know, is this somebody's, you know, whoever's in an official capacity in whatever country it is getting the money? Or how do we have the metrics? Borgen Project have the metrics to say, no, this is actually like, you know, who's getting the money?
Making sure you have Curtis sign up for the Foundation Emerging Leaders track in Zone 31 meeting, right?
Yes, he also has to take my advanced international knowledge.
Okay. Just making sure. October 15th, Curtis, I expect to see you in Chattanooga.
Well, yeah, the Borgen Project donations don't directly go to
Sure. So the Morgan Foundation is just Borgen. Sorry, Borgen. So the purpose really is to influence lawmakers, legislatures, and then from there, like the chain goes on, and who knows what happens, right?
Yes, please.
and then they make bills that
yeah.
reduce poverty and newborn health.
So it's like an influencer sort of organization.